Worldwide, the built environment is one of the single biggest contributors to carbon emissions and waste, with buildings currently responsible for around 39% of global energy-related carbon emissions, according to the World Green Building Council. Against the rising threat of the climate crisis and united international commitments to drive down carbon and waste, it's clear there's much to be done. Now, here in the UK, manufacturers in the construction sector need to play their part in cutting the carbon cost of their operations, and there has been significant progress on this front. In this episode of Building Better, we're here to dig deeper into what form this progress is taking. Specifically, we'll be focusing on what's being done across manufacturing, logistics, on-site activities, and post-use materials, taking a look at how construction suppliers and partners are taking direct action on driving down Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Now, unsure what I'm referring to? In a nutshell, Scope 1 emissions are those carbon emissions that come directly from a company's own controlled resources and operations. Scope 2, on the other hand, are indirect emissions emerging from a company's utilities and other providers. Now, there's also Scope 3, which are the wider emissions from other companies on behalf of a company, but it gets complicated given the whole supply chain, value chain nature of it, so that's a story for another episode. Today, however, we're firmly focused on construction figures taking direct action over waste and emissions. So let's begin by going into the manufacturing plant itself, seeing how building better means reducing our impact right from the start.
I'm Ian Hayes. I'm the Capital Projects Manager for Isover in Runcorn. I look after all the routine CapEx for the site. That includes all environmental, cost reduction initiatives, equipment replacement, and facilities renewals as well. So the aim for Saint-Gobain and for Isover is to ensure that we head towards carbon neutrality by 2050. We will look at reducing raw material use and loss. We have some of that through the plant. We'll also look to reduce electricity consumption, along with gas consumption in particular, because of the CO2 emissions from that, and then any diesel use, that type of thing as well. So, we have initiatives around replacing heating where we can throughout the site, lighting, obviously. We also look, as we're doing with the wet scraps recycling project, to try and stop some of the waste going to landfill as well.
Prior to 2024, we would send our wet scrap material to landfill. We decided to come up with a solution to recycle that back into the process. To do that, we take the material, we put it in a hopper. From the hopper, it will go into a shredder. And from the shredder, it goes through a chain-bay system, which runs for 60 metres all the way to our melter plant.
The wet scrap recycling scheme seeks to recycle small waste pieces of glass fibre which are produced from the process, and we capture those waste pieces in water. We'll then sieve them as part of the process, and we take that and then press the water out of it. It's still wet. It's about 30% moisture, and then we'll send that through the new wet scrap system that we've got, that will take it and put it back into process. So the scrap comes from, we use vacuum and we use high volume air, and obviously with the mat on the conveyor, we will get small pieces break away, and that's happening all the time. As I say, to stop them becoming airborne, we capture that in water, and that's where it goes off to be recycled. We chose the chain vase system so we can make the system fully automated. It's a really good, elegant system in that respect. We can then run it 24 hours a day as well, because it doesn't make a lot of noise. In terms of the impact to the product, well, you wouldn't know any different. So actually putting the wet scraps back in, get exactly the same product as they were before. There's been no noticeable difference. The challenge in the design and the installation was taking a piece of equipment, which is a chain vey system, which is generally used in the food industry, to move things like coffee beans about, and salt and stuff like that, rock salt. The challenge was adapting it for the product that we want to put through it. We had to use two systems. We felt we could use one at first, but in the end we had to use two systems to allow it to travel the 60 metres that we want to. Certainly half of that distance is on the vertical as well. So yeah, that was quite a challenge, again with the installation as well. Trying to get that equipment up and over the roof, that was quite challenging as well from a safety perspective, and from a logistical perspective as well, I guess. Our edict is that we need to work towards a more sustainable site. And this is obviously a key part in doing so. So anywhere, any opportunity for recycling, not just wet scraps, but any other material, because at some point we will look at dry scrap recycling as well, but that's for a different day. Yeah, any opportunity that we can look to recycle, we will look at the options.
As we've seen, reducing our impact isn't just about the products and materials we use, it's about how they're made. Less water, less energy, less carbon, more consciousness. Let's now continue our journey towards reducing our impact with the next stage in a product's lifespan. After manufacture, testing and quality assurance, it's time to ship it out to wherever it's needed. And here, logistics can be a huge source of carbon emissions as well as waste and inefficiency. So we went and talked to the people on the ground across Isover and British Gypsum's distribution network to get a handle on the major programs and everyday activities they're undertaking to move products smarter, more efficiently, and altogether better.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brian Fisher. I'm the Head of Distribution for Saint-Gobain Interior Solutions. So my primary responsibility is delivery of our finished goods to our customers. We've got a great team that works for us. We work really hard in delivering exceptional customer service and getting the right thing to the customers at the right time. So when we look at how we optimise our network, the other Saint-Gobain UK brands form an important part of that. And through the control tower, we look at how we can share empty legs, so we're running less empty miles in the UK. We've taken, over the last couple of years, 4,700 empty legs, or about 1.3 million kilometres that we haven't run empty now. We've got over 500 trailers running around the country, and stitching that together, and the teams work really hard to make sure they're in the right place to load, but they're also in the right place to deliver to the customer. So sustainability is incredibly important to us. We've been working for a couple of years to increase our work in the area. We're reducing our CO2 emissions. We're targeting around 70% of our fleet emissions to be reduced by the end of this year. So HVO is one of our sustainable fuels. We made a decision in 2022 to move away from diesel as far as we could possibly do. Very fortunate, HVO is a drop-in fuel, so you can take a normal diesel truck with a modern engine, refuel it in HVO with no impact. So the operational impact is zero, but the sustainability impact, we get about a 9% reduction in our CO2. We're running now, probably 70% of our UK fleet are running on HVO. That's a massive reduction in CO2. That's incredibly important. So HVO can't be the final solution because it didn't give you a zero emission, but it's been a really good stopgap to take us the last couple of years. So now that the effort now is on the journey from HVO to the next stage of sustainable fuels, which is moving towards the battery electric vehicles. We're just moving now into a significant trial for Saint-Gobain UK really. We're bringing 6 electric HGVs into Gypsum, 5 articulated trucks and 1 rigid. They'll be the first sort of big articulated and big delivery fleet we've got in the UK that's electric. From a Scope 3 perspective, with most of our fleet now running on sustainable fuels, we've saved 32,000 tonnes of CO2 since 2022 when we started the journey. That's a significant decrease to the emissions on our Scope 3 targets. So from a sustainability perspective, we work really hard to ensure that sustainability is an important part of the decision-making process. And it's not just about our transport fleet, but it's the way we operate the site. So a great example is when we built a new perimeter fence, we installed a hedge inside it to give us a net diversity benefit. We put a couple of beehives in because it gives us a benefit. We make sure the plants that we plant are the right plants for the bees. When we built the new gatehouse, we put solar panels on the gatehouse. When we installed the vehicle wash, we make sure the vehicle wash gives us 95% recycled water. How our brand looks on the roads is really important. But obviously, vehicle washers, when you're washing things the size of a truck, use a lot of water. The one we've got recycles 95% of the water. And even our MHE in the warehouse, we've got the only electric 5-ton forklift trucks in the business. With the warehouse, it's an old facility. So we've just gone through a process of installing proximity lighting. So that reduces the energy bill, they're LED, which draws less. But actually when we're not operating in a particular zone, the lights switch off. We've obviously got the 2 5-ton electric trucks. Those are, we put those in 2 years ago now as a trial to see if they could actually operate as a 5-ton truck in a plasterboard warehouse, and that's been really successful. On a CO2 per shipment basis, we're now at 110 kilos per shipment. In 2022, we were 249 kilos per shipment. That's a significant decrease in the last couple of years. Sustainability is much more than just fuel and CO2. Bees are a great investment for the site. They're an important part of our biodiversity plan. They generate a lot of honey, so we get about 300 or 400 jars a year of honey. We sell those £5 a jar. That all goes to a local charity in Nottingham. The guys on site love the bees. The logos across our brand now. Our schools program uses the logo. I suspect we're more famous for our bees now than we are for our trucks.
So my name is Jonathan Mayle and my role is Head of Operational Planning and Fulfilment. The pallet loop is a circular pallet reuse scheme designed specifically for the construction sector. The innovative supply chain solution incentivises and enables the recovery, repair and reuse of pallets, supported by a dedicated nationwide collection service. Loop pallets are distinctively green in colour and different by design, with some specifications having enhanced strength and durability to support multiple use through the supply chain. In May 2024, British Gypsum became the first building materials manufacturer in the UK to form a strategic partnership with the pallet loop in a bid to significantly reduce pallet waste. So far we are seeing a very good uptake on pallet returns, and we have nearly 7,000 locations registered with the pallet loop for pallet collections. And as we see more of our products go out on green loop pallets, we will see an increase in that return rate as well. The industry challenge is that British Gypsum use approximately 1.6 million timber pallets every year, and historically only around 10% of those ever get returned. Pallets left behind after products have been removed have for a long time created a challenge across the industry, with many being unsustainably disposed of at a heavy environmental cost. By joining forces with the pallet loop, we aim to significantly reduce this practice. Wooden timber pallets end up in skips, in landfill, and there is a benefit of repatriating those pallets, of using those pallets again multiple times. It helps reduce on waste going to landfill, it helps reduce on the carbon footprint that we have.
So we've now seen how impact can be reduced in the creation of construction materials and in their journeys to site. In future episodes, We'll be looking at how we can design and build smarter, more efficiently, and put energy efficiency into the very fabric of our projects. But what happens to building materials after use? There's a massive drive to reduce waste going into landfill across all industries, and the materials that go into our buildings are no different. Given the amount of retrofit and refurb projects happening every day nationwide, our industry needs to be conscious of the ultimate destination of our waste materials and think how they can be put better to use. One example is plasterboard. Traditionally, most is not easy to use or recycle, but British Gypsum have been pioneering and trialling a new set of schemes aiming to bring some circular thinking to its production line. Let's hear more.
Hi, my name is Raghav Arasala and I'm the Mineral Handling Manager at British Gypsum East Leake Works. So I'm responsible for the safety and housekeeping of the mineral handling area. So that involves the rock intake, the intake of synthetic gypsum and the scrap reprocessing area. So that large pile over there, that is all our internal production scrap. So we have 2 board lines here in East Leake Works, and anything that isn't to spec or is not suitable for sale, we will essentially take from the storage areas and it gets sent over to here and crushed. On the other side, we have what we call PRS material. So PRS stands for the Plasterboard Recycling Scheme. And what it is different building sites will generate offcuts from when they're doing any construction work. We employ a third-party company to take those offcuts. They'll then recycle and process them along with any other plaster or plasterboard waste that they have, and they bring it back to us. One, they don't need to pay for landfill or anything like that. It's a service that we'll provide. So all of it will go back into plasterboard that they can use, well, for their own building sites and everything like that. This way we can just make sure we're using less mined rock, which as a finite resource is always ever dwindling. We're doing our part to make sure we're not using extra mining processes, even though we've got an electric mining is mostly electric here. In other places it might not be, so we're doing our part, reduce carbon dioxide emissions and help improve world sustainability. Nothing in East Leake goes to landfill. Everything will either go offsite to recycling or for further processing. Well, it's all essentially just plasterboard waste, essentially. So we've got our wheel loaders, what they'll do, or the front end loaders, what they'll do is they'll blend the 2 piles together into the appropriate amount, and then that is just fed as a blended mixture into the scrap plant. So in this building, this is where we essentially move the dry scrap. So outside we had the plasterboard scrap directly from the factory, and we've had the PRS material. The front end loader will blend the 2 together and feed it into the hopper, and at the base of the hopper are Norber screws. And what these do is this break down the material further. It then gets sent up this conveyor belt. You can see we've got an electromagnet and a metal detector just to catch out any impurities from the PRS or contaminants from the PRS process. At the top of this conveyor is a hammer mill, and that pulverizes the material even further and feeds it into a silo. This is plasterboard scrap. So this scrap here has been crushed finely and separated from the backing paper. This then goes into either the rock belts here, or it goes onto the synthetic gypsum belts, and it gets sent all over to the mill. Wet scrap is essentially any plasterboard scrap before it has gone through the drying stage when you make plasterboard. So if there are any quality issues or issues with the machinery on the wet side, then that is where we'll have wet scrap. So that wet scrap will mix with either bagged plaster scrap, we'll mix it with some PRS and some dry material. That then gets crushed by an excavator, which will pulverize it. We then send it through a rotary trommel, which will again separate the paper from the powder. The powder, we mix it with incoming plasterboard powder. This has been pre-processed demolition waste that has been done by a third company, and then we feed that through another hopper, and that goes onto the rock belts directly. And then the paper joins up with the other paper and is sent off site.
From old plasterboard to new beginnings, it's great to see circularity being embraced by the industry, driving down our impact and building better for people and planet in the long term. Fittingly, we've come full circle for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to get involved in the conversation on our social channels. But you can also stay up to date on all the latest news at the Building Better Hub. We'll see you on the next instalment of Building Better.